the former Gauteng MEC for Health, Qedani Mahlangu, apologized for the lives lost during the implementation of the Life Esidimeni project. Now, she also hopes that her testimony will help families to find closure and explore the consequences to be faced by all those who were involved and or played various roles that led to a system failing the deceased. Mahlangu appeared before the Life Esidimeni High Court inquest to determine if anyone can be held criminally liable for the deaths of the patients who were moved to different NGOs in 2016. And the mental health patients had serious problems and died in undignified conditions, with over 1,400 patients surviving, and they were exposed to immense torture, trauma, and severe violations of their human rights. So for just a reaction of yesterday's testimony by Qedani Mahlangu and the court process as a whole, we are joined by Christine Nxumalo, who's a member of the Life Esidimeni Family Committee. Christine, good to speak to you again. Welcome to Morning Live.
Good morning, Sakina. Thank you for having me.
So the High Court Life Esidimeni Inquest is being held, of course, in order to determine if anyone can be held criminally liable for the deaths of the over 140 patients when they were moved to those NGOs. And the families, of course, have been very vocal. You have been watching all of these proceedings all along. Are you feeling that this particular inquest is bringing you closer to finding some form of closure as families?
I'm not so sure about closure, but we are getting bits and pieces of information that are, giving us a fuller picture of what happened. But closure, I'm not so sure, Sakina. It seems like we're moving more further and further away from justice. So justice without closure, closure without justice, I don't think it's possible really at this stage.
Explain that for us, Christine, because you lost your sister Virginia after she was transferred without your knowledge at that to the Precious Angels NGO. So what do you mean when you say that you feel like you're moving, perhaps further from justice at this point?
Sakina, if you recall, one of the things that we called out, or we called for back in the day, which was in 2016, where we asked for the inquest to happen back then, when the information was fresh, when, investigations could happen, and I suppose information being found and the picture being put together. To happen, 5 years later? And still not get answers, I think that's the justice that's eluding us. And that's the information that we are moving further and further away from.
So, Christine, in his report, Justice Dikgang Moseneke found that state officials behaved unconstitutionally and the decisions that were taken were irrational to end the Life Esidimeni contract. Do you think that his recommendations are fully being instituted by the Gauteng government at this stage?
No, they're not. No, they're not. We actually, to be honest with you, we thought we were meeting each other at some point. But on the 30th of March, we were called to a meeting to discuss the monument. And when we got there, we actually realized that the families that were supposed to be compensated, some of them have not even received a cent. Some of them have received 50% of the money that they were supposed to get. So it was impossible for us to talk about a monument when we were having family members who were still crying about compensation. The change in how they were going to treat and deal with mental health care users in this facility has not changed. So when we're saying we're moving further and further away, this is what we are talking about. There's no real will or political will to fix the wrong that was done. So no, I don't think we're actually getting any better or we're getting any closer to answers, to be honest with you.
So my understanding was at some point, some of the families were actually paid. So can you just give us some clarity, Christine, as to who is still awaiting payment of the families?
This is, Sakina, the way it was done back then. The families who appeared before Moseneke, those families were compensated in full. That was just a small number of the families. The families who came forward afterwards there was an agreement that 50-50 will be, or the money will be split in 50-50, meaning the first 50% will go to the families and the remaining 50% will be for the patient. And obviously there was processes and a criterion which they needed to subscribe to in order to actually claim. So from what we understood, about 500 claims were put forward and only a few of them were actually qualified, so to speak. So we are nowhere near the compensation or have reached the numbers that we're supposed to have at 5 years later, really.
So that was, of course, at a time when this particular story was, so to speak, center stage, getting a lot of media attention and otherwise. Do you think that as a result of the attention being shifted away from the story, this is perhaps why things have slowed down on the state side as well?
Sakina, isn't this the story of South Africa? This is generally how things happen. When the media is on the story, then there seems to be the will to do the right thing, or supposed will to do the right thing. The minute it quiets down and it's only the families that are left to attend to the matter, then you get the backtracking from government. That's why nothing gets resolved, nothing gets sorted out. And that's basically where we are right now.
So now we've seen, the former MEC, Qedani Mahlangu, she's finally taken the stand at the inquest. And what did you make of the evidence that she gave on her first day on the stand?
Look, she tried to portray herself as somebody who cares suddenly, who is remorseful suddenly. But to be honest with you, she was not, what is the word? She was still saying the same thing. She was giving the impression that these facilities needed to be closed because of the evergreen contract that she was referring to, because she mentioned the date of the 1 August 1979. And that was her reason for cost cutting. How do you go cost cutting and you go to the most vulnerable group in the whole healthcare system for you to cost cut and to actually save money? She could have gone somewhere else. She could have chosen another project or somewhere to cut money, but not simply because it's a evergreen contract. And the way it was done, had she listened to the families, had she listened to the cries, then maybe, just maybe, we would have believed her apology yesterday.
And there was, of course, previously also Dr. Manamela, and haven't spoken to you since this inquest began, Christine. So what did you make of her testimony when she was on the stand as well?
Well, every one of them have actually just been like throwing each other under the bus. So no one is saying, I did X, Y, Z. I made the decision. I signed this. I did. So nobody's taking responsibility. So basically each one of the officials is throwing each other under the bus, but no one taking responsibility. So there's nothing different that they're saying. And the only thing that seems to be different now is their demeanor and realizing, what, they need to sound a bit more remorseful. They need to show that they care a little bit so that I suppose the rest of the country can see that they really didn't mean what they did.
And speaking of throwing each other under the bus, Mahlangu also testified, as you pointed out, that this evergreen contract with Life Esidimeni actually terminated on the 21st of October 2015. And she also went on to say that the decision was made through the Premier's budget committee that was led by the then Gauteng Premier David Makhura. Again, your reaction to that, because it seems as though these officials are just passing the buck, as it were.
Sakina, one of the things that a lot of people don't realize is that I work for government. And when you are asked as the MEC to find places where you can actually cut costs or improve on the way you use your money, it means you go and you look at your whole portfolio and you look where you can save money. Now, she obviously must have thought that the Life Esidimeni is the one place where she can save money. How is that logical? She's the one who put that proposal through to her supervisors, her principals. They could not have told her, go and cut the Life Esidimeni contract. She put that proposal through, and she must have put the costs through to say, this is how much we will save. What she also did not, and I'm sure did not outline, was how she was going to cut that cost and actually save lives. It was a matter of just cutting costs. The saving lives part, I'm sure, was not discussed. Because if it was discussed, then I think the rollout plan would have been a lot better. There would have been NGOs that were actually registered long before the time to show and to make sure that they are ready. But instead, the families were called. She put that proposal through in October. By December, she was meeting with NGOs saying to them, if you're looking for a business opportunity, come forward and put your name forward and tell me how many patients you can take to make money per patient. This was deliberate.
And of course, this inquest, Christine, is to establish whether anyone should be held criminally liable for the deaths of the 144 patients. What are your thoughts?
To be honest with you, as MEC, you know the buck stops with you. Nothing happens without you knowing what is going on. She signed off on it. She made the presentations on it. She put the proposals through on it. So yes, she must be one of the key people that must pay for this. But it doesn't excuse the HOD, nor does it excuse Manamela, nor does it excuse the officials who took an oath to save lives, who knew what would happen, who decided to keep quiet rather than to protect themselves. So every single one of the Department of Health officials, even in the district, must be held accountable to some degree or other.
And do you believe that they should be held criminally liable as well, Christine?
To be honest with you, I think the top three who actually signed up on the proposal should be held criminally liable. The others, unfortunately, knowing how Mahlangu was back in the day and when she was MEC, did not give them a choice. So it would be unfair for all of them to be criminally held liable. But Mahlangu, Selobano and Manamela definitely must be held criminally liable because they knew, they took an oath.
Well, we have to leave it there. Thank you so much, Christine Nxumalo, member of the Life Esidimeni Family Committee, just giving us, her thoughts and reaction to the testimony yesterday by the former MEC in the Gauteng Department of Health, Qedani Mahlangu, who took to the stand. And this is, of course, the thoughts of Christine Nxumalo, who lost her sister during that process.